The story of the shipwrecked sailor. Companions had previously recounted to the prince other near Atmas, in order to console him in his affliction. A worthy henchman said, "Be of good cheer, Prince, behold, we have reached the residence. One, the mallet hath been taken, the mooring post driven in, and the bow rope run along the ground. There is praising and thanksgiving to God, and every one embraceth his fellow. Our crew hath come home safe and sound, and our soldiers have suffered no loss. We have readied the end of what and have passed by Senmet. See, we have returned in peace and have reached our own land. Hearken to me, Prince, I am one that is free from exaggeration. Wash thyself and pour water on thy fingers. Answer when thou art greeted, speak to the king having thy wits about thee, and answer without faltering. It is a man's mouth that saved him, and his speech maketh men forbearing towards him. Thou wilt do as thou willst, to speak to thee is irksome to thee. Yet I will relate to thee something like thereunto, that was experienced by me myself, when I had set out for the mines of the sovereign, and gone down to the sea in a ship of 120 cubits in length and 40 cubits in breadth, for and therein were 120 sailors of the pick of Egypt. They scanned the sky, they scanned the earth, and their hearts were more than those of lions. They foretold a storm or ever it came, and a tempest when as yet it was not. A storm burst while we were yet at sea, before we had reached land. We flew before the wind 5 and it made and a wave 8 cubits high was within it. It was a piece of wood that, it to me. The henchman wakes up his lord in the morning on board ship and announces that they are once more in Egypt. They have passed the frontier island of Senmet, and the ship is already alongside of the quay. Accordingly the residence must here mean Elephantine, thus possibly the residence of the prince himself, but he has still to continue his voyage northward to the king, in order to make report to him. And the ship perished, and of them that were in it not one survived. And I was cast on to an island by a wave of the sea, and I spent 3 days alone with mine heart only as my companion. I slept under the shelter of a tree, and embraced the shade. Then I stretched forth my feet in order to find out what I could put into my mouth. I found figs and vines there, and all manner of line leeks, cow fruit together with necut fruit and cucumbers. There were fish there and fowl, and there was nothing that was not in it. Then I satisfied myself and still left over, for it was too much for my hands. When I had made me a fire drill, 3 I kindled a fire and made a burnt offering for the gods. Then I heard the sound of thunder and thought it was a wave of the sea. The trees brake, and the earth quaked. I uncovered my face and found that it was a serpent that drew nigh. He was 30 cubits long, and his beard it was longer than 2 cubits, his body was overlaid with gold, his eyebrows were of real lapis lazuli. 3 And he coiled himself forward. He opened his mouth at me, while I was on my belly in front of him. And he said unto me, Who hath brought thee hither? Who hath brought thee hither, little one? Who hath brought thee hither? If thou delayest in telling me who hath brought thee to this island, I will let thee know thyself to be but ashes, becoming as that which is not seen. 6-7 I answered, Thou speakest unto me, and yet I hear it not. I am in thy presence, but my wits have gone. Then he took me in his mouth and brought me to his lair, and set me down without touching me, and I was whole and there was nothing torn from me. He opened his mouth at me, while I was on my belly in front of him. And he said unto me, Who hath brought thee hither? Who hath brought thee hither, little one? Who hath brought thee to this island of the sea, which is encompassed on both sides by the waters? And I made answer to him, my arms being bent one in his presence, and said unto him, I am one who went down to the mines on an errand of the sovereign, with a ship of 120 cubits in length and 40 cubits in breadth, and therein were 120 sailors of the pick of Egypt. They scanned the sky, they scanned the earth, and their hearts were more than those of lions. They foretold the storm or ever it came, and the tempest when as yet it was not. Each one of them was of heart and stronger of arm than his fellow, and there was no fool among them. A storm burst while we were yet at sea, before we had reached land. We flew before the wind and it made day, and a wave 8 cubits high was within it. It was a piece of wood that, it to me. Then the ship perished, and of them that were in it not one survived save me, and behold, here I am beside thee, and I was brought to this island by a wave of the sea. Then he said unto me, fear not, little one, let not thy countenance, now that thou art come to me. Lo, God hath preserved thee alive to bring thee to this island of the Katu, in which there is nothing that is not in it, and it is full of all good things. Lo, thou shalt spend month after month in this island until thou completest 4 months. Then a ship will come from the residence 3 with sailors in it whom thou knowest, and thou shalt go with them to the residence and die in thine own town. How glad is he that relateth what he hath experienced when the calamity hath passed. So I will relate to thee something like this which came to pass in this island. For I was in it with my brethren, and children were in their midst, and we numbered in all 75 serpents, my children and my brethren, without my mentioning to thee the daughter of a humble woman that was brought to me by then a star fell. And these went up in fire because of it. Now it happened when I was not with the burned ones, and while I was not in their midst. And I almost died on their account when I found them as one heap of corpses. If thou art valiant, curb thine heart. Then, thou wilt embrace thy children and kiss thy wife and see thine house that is the best thing of all. Thou wilt arrive at the residence, and dwell there in the midst of thy brethren. Then I extended myself on my belly and touched the ground in his presence. And I said unto him, I will discourse on thy nature to the sovereign and acquaint him with thy greatness. I will cause Ibe, Hekenu, Eun-Eb, and Kesed too to be brought to thee, and incense of the temples, wherewith every god is made content. I will relate what befell me, and of what I have seen. Thou shalt be thanked in the city in the presence of the officers of the entire land. 3 I will slay for thee oxen for burnt offering, and geese will I sacrifice for thee. I will send thee ships laden with all the precious things of Egypt, as should be done for a god, that loveth men, in a land far off which men know not. 4. Thereupon he laughed at me and at what I had said, as being but foolishness in his heart. 5 And he said unto me, Thou hast not myrrh 6 in plenty, being but a possessor of frankincense. But I am the prince of Punt, and myrrh, that is my very own. As for that Hekenu whereof thou didst say that it is to be brought to me, why that is the chief product of this island. But it shall happen, when thou art parted from this place, that never shalt thou behold this island more, for it will become water. And then that ship came, even as he had foretold. And I went and climbed a tall tree, and I descried them that were in it. And I went to report it, but found that he already knew it. And he said unto me, Safely, safely home, little one, and see thy children, and give me a good name in thy city. Lo, that is all I require of thee. Then I placed me on my belly, and my arms were bent in his presence. And he gave me a freight of myrrh, hekenu, uneb, kesed, tishups, shaz, cosmetic, giraffes' tails, a great mass of incense, elephant tusks, greyhounds, monkeys, apes, and all goodly treasures. 2 And I stowed them on this ship. Now when I had placed me on my belly to thank him, he said unto me, Lo, thou shalt reach the residence in 2 months, shalt hold thy children in thine embrace, grow young again at the residence, and be buried. 3. And I went down to the shore where this ship lay. And I hailed the contingent that was in this ship, and gave praise upon the shore to the Lord of this island, and they that were on board did likewise. Then we voyaged northwards to the residence of their sovereign, and we reached the residence in 2 months, according to all that he had said. And I entered in before the sovereign and presented unto him all this treasure which I had brought from this island. And he thanked me in the sight of the officers of the entire land, and I was appointed to be a henchman and was presented with people of his. Look at me after I reached land, after I saw what I had experienced. For hearken unto my speech. Lo, it is good for men to hearken. And he said unto me, Act not the superior person, my friend, who giveth water at dawn to a bird that he will kill early in the morning.